I am excited to introduce some pretty amazing people for this Heads of State get-together. The first person you know, Mike Dungan, is Chairman and CEO of Universal Music Group Nashville, the largest music company in country music. He's a native of Cincinnati. His team almost did it. I had my money on them. He's worked in the music business since he was 16 years old, getting his start at odd jobs in a local record store. In 1979, Dungan began his label career as a pop promotion rep for RCA, working in Cincinnati, Detroit, and then Minneapolis. In 1987, he took a sales position with RCA and Arista Records at the parent company, BMG. 2 years later, Arista Records hired him as its director of marketing for the Midwest region. In 1990, Mr. Dungan moved to the newly formed Arista Nashville to head up sales and marketing. The man's had an amazing career because while at Arista, he was instrumental in developing and launching careers including Brooks and Dunn, Alan Jackson, Pam Tillis, Diamond Rio, and was responsible for the signing of Brad Paisley. This guy in 2000 was named president of iMusic's Capitol Records Nashville, and over the next 12 years, helped to build that company to enormous success, with the Capitol label being named Billboard Magazine's Country Label of the Year again in 2012. You have to bear with me, this was so much easier when I had a lavalier and not a handheld microphone. He and I go back to when I had black hair and he had hair. And would you join me in welcoming a man who today is at the home of 32 of the biggest artists, including Luke Bryan, Keith Urban, Lady Antebellum. You just enjoyed his lunch. Please, Mike Dungan. You are very welcome. Our next guest, Caroline Beasley, was appointed Chief Executive Officer of Beasley Media Group on January 1, 2017. In her role, she's been responsible for leading the company's 62 radio properties, digital operations, and esports division, which includes ownership of the Overwatch League's Houston Outlaws. She previously served as Interim Chief Executive Officer from March 18, 2016 through the end of 2016, and was Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and Treasurer and Secretary starting in 1994. She joined and served as a director of the company since she first joined the organization in 1983. The media executive currently serves as the chair of the BMI Board of Directors. She's the immediate past chair of the joint board chair of the National Association of Broadcasters Board of Directors, and is a former chair of the NAB Radio Board. Caroline serves as a member of the Broadcasters Foundation of America Board of Directors. In April of 22, this coming April, she's going to receive the National Association of Broadcasters National Radio Award for her dedication and commitment to the radio industry at the upcoming NAB show. Would you welcome Caroline Beasley? So let's see if, will my lavalier work now? No, okay, then I'm gonna keep using this thing. So, and I could have gone on.
There.
Thank you very much. These are my Benstown socks, the little mascot.
Very nice.
Gary on there. Thank you, thank you. I'm the sock man. Bear with me while I flip through all of this stuff. So I'm gonna start with you first, Caroline. The thing I hear most about, Beasley Broadcasting is, you're the other guys. And I mean that positively in that, you've spent a lot of time in that it is, a family group. There's a lot of family members in the company, but you operate as a family company for people that aren't in the family. And that's a very different approach, particularly given where we've been. It's had to have been tough at times through consolidation, through a pandemic that hurt a lot of different businesses. And yet you really are the other guys, so much so that it has to be purposeful and thought of. It didn't just happen. So what's the strategy around that, and what's the Beasley approach?
Yeah, so it really goes back to the foundation upon which our company was built upon. My dad started the company over 60 years ago, and his vision was to provide a voice for the voiceless, really serve our local communities, and that's what we're focused on as a company today. In addition to that, our mission statement, provide the very best content to our audience, the very best results to our advertisers, serve our local communities, and last but certainly not least, provide a nice, great working environment for our employees. And that is what we strive to do. We are a public company. We're not just a family company. We are a public company. So, we really do have to focus on the bottom line as well. But we try to stay true to our mission. And I think a part of it, too, is the fact that we actually try to get out to our markets and talk with our employees. And you can learn a lot about what is going on, within the markets, certain challenges and also opportunities that I wouldn't otherwise know just by sitting in Naples. So it's a lot of different things, but it's just, it's the way we were brought up and the way my dad led the company and the way we're leading the company today as well.
You mentioned your father, and I think I've told you the story before, that years ago when your company owned Power 108 in Cleveland, it was, I'm going way back.
You are.
And it was probably 82, 84, something like that. And I was just building McVay Media, and I had reached out to your father because I'd heard rumors that the station was for sale. And he called me back and said, no, we're not for sale. We like Cleveland. It's a market we want to be in. But if we ever decide we're going to sell it, I will call you. 5 years later, I never brought it up again, never. And by the way, 5 years later, I didn't have the money I had at the time 5 years earlier. And he called me back and said, I just want you to know we are going to announce that the station is for sale. And if you're still interested, we'd like to talk to you. I remember telling you that I would give you that option. And I can't remember what I had for breakfast, let alone, something 5 years earlier. And so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, look, anyone that knew my dad, I'm just amazed at the number of stories that I hear similar to yours. So thank you for sharing that.
And speaking of memories, I remember the days when Mike Dungan would come into Louisville, and I was a PD at WAKY, Wacky 79, and WVEZ. And if I go back to those early days, and you talked about, in your bio, I talked about that you started a record store, and you talk about starting in the trenches. Today, so many things have changed. You can't walk into Vine Records now and see what songs are selling. And so the metrics are very different. The way you decide what you're going to invest in has to be very different. When we look at radio, the DSPs, Bluetooth, devices, we're Dick Tracy. We have watches that we talk on. How are you approaching media today, the technology we have, and how do you see it changing over the next couple years?
Well, the world has been forecasting the end of broadcast radio for as long as I've been in the business, I think, certainly over the last 10 years. And there was a time when that rumble, that roar got so loud that I started to believe it. It's certainly not true. It is still the straightest line, the quickest line from A to B. So when I want to make something happen, I need to engage with broadcast radio, as it was, as it will be for the foreseeable future. The end result, the way we make money is totally different, but getting it to the people and getting people to engage with the music is still radio is still the thing. The thing that's really different for us and for me now as an old guy is obviously that our currency has completely changed, and we are judged by how much revenue we're making from streaming. But it is apparent that the songs that are streamed the most, the songs that are streamed in mass, are the ones that are made hits at radio. So my focus is still there. I'm sure I'm criticized a little bit by some of the younger people that come on and think, that's old school, but it's very much real time to me, and I think it will be that way for a while.
Yeah, I mean, you are right that I remember as recently as 10 and 15 years ago, people asking me what radio would be doing in 10 years. And so it has been predicted that way for a long, long time. You came from pop top 40 and have some rock in your experience as well. And there's no other format like country. I mean, as far as the relationship between radio and records and how everybody, seems to work in a genre, what were those things that surprised you when you came into the country arena?
Well, I came reluctantly. I was working for the big arista, Clive Davis. I was working with Whitney Houston and the Grateful Dead and Kenny G and Barry Manilow, and I was doing marketing. And Clive was challenged by the parent company, BMG, who had also bought RCA, to double the size of Arista Records in 3 years. And for that, they were going to give him personally a huge sum. And he said, of course I can do that. And set about on this expansion program that was a little too aggressive. But part of that was he started 3 new operations. One was LaFace in Atlanta with LA and Babyface. The other was Puff Daddy. We had Bad Boy. And then he started Arista Nashville with this odd guy named Tim Dubois. And I was thrust into working with all 3 of these entities because they didn't really know how to do much besides make music. And I quickly fell in love with the Nashville people. And I found that I really loved the music, much to my surprise, because I always liked some country music. And Tim Dubois, over time, convinced me to move here. Now, when I moved here, the pop business was insane, and my life was insane. And, this, in many respects, saved my life and put me on a truer, straighter, less insane path. And I knew that the artists and the people that were around the artists were nicer because I had interacted with them throughout my pop career, whenever we'd cross over a Ronnie Millsap or, something like that. I knew they were nicer, but when I got here, it was like, wow, I had no idea. Everyone is nice. Everyone is nice, and this is the best place in the world to work. In the meantime, all my friends who were rock and pop snobs were going, you dumb hillbilly, what have you done? You've ruined your life. You moved to Nashville. You're working with that crap. Nashville doesn't even have a Major League Baseball team. What are you doing there? And I was the happiest guy in the world. Now, my wife hated it for 2 years. She cried every night for 2 years because it was a hick town. They used to have Taste of Nashville. They have Taste of Atlanta. Taste of Nashville, like the premier restaurant was Applebee's.
So wait, let me just make sure I understood. Nashville, country music saved your life. That's what I heard.
It did. It saved my life.
All right, guys.
And it became immediate. I came here thinking, all right, I'm going to teach these hicks how to do it the right way. I'm just like a hick myself, but and when I came here, I quickly realized that not only was I wrong in most of my assumptions, they were right. They had a different way to do things, but it was just as effective. And ironically, a year later, 2 years later, I was getting calls from my best of friends who said, I'm thinking about moving to Nashville. Do you think you could help me find a job? And, and they all moved here, and, we just moved the hillbilly from one format to another is what we did.
Were you going to, Caroline, were you going to suggest that that's a country song?
Yeah, it sounds like a good one to me. I don't know.
So let me come back to you, Caroline, on when I look at Beasley Broadcast Group, I would not say you're a pure play radio company because you have so many different things you're doing, like the sports, and I'm curious as to, where you see radio going, but also I'd like to hear, the sports part of your business and esports and gambling and how is it all coming together for Beasley, and where do you think the radio industry is with it?
Yeah, so look, radio, that was the foundation upon which our company was built upon, and without radio, we would not have been able to venture out into digital, into esports, and we're going to talk about the metaverse just a little bit as well. So I view all these other platforms as just extensions of our brands, right? We have these amazing brands that were built by this amazing, massive audience in radio, and we've been able to take that audience and move them, shift them over to digital. And then at the same time, as that audience has grown, gotten a little older, we wanted to continue to attract a younger demo. So we decided that we would get into esports. And that's really why, it's really, we view esports as content that will reach the younger demographic. And so we're really excited about the opportunities that lie ahead. Again, we have such great brands, and we're able to extend those brands. We're able to grow our audience. We'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit, and diversify our revenue.
Yeah, so let me jump to the metaverse then, since it just popped up, and Mike, I'm going to ask you how labels and music are looking at it as well. But from my perspective, this is very, very new for radio even to start to think about it, or audio. What's your take on the metaverse? What are you thinking? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I just view it as another platform for us to distribute our content, and just think about that it's interactive, and it allows us the opportunity to further reach the younger demographic. So, whether it's concerts in the metaverse, whether it's most of the worlds that you see out there today are built by, esports. And so we think that with our esports background that we have now, that's going to be a very good conduit into the metaverse as well. So we're doing a lot of research within the company and looking at various opportunities. And again, it's just bottom line is, at the end of the day, you want to make money, right? So you have to have a path of monetization and also growing your audience, and that's what we're really focused on.
But it really is, you think about virtual reality, and you say the concerts, and so I think that dovetails into, your world, Mike, on, are we going, I always remember some years ago, and I mentioned it yesterday, visiting a label in Los Angeles, and I mean 15 years ago, and I'm walking through the hallways, and somebody opened the doors to one room as we walked by, and it was loud Dolby surround sound coming out and something up on the screen. And I was like, what's going on in there? And they said, putting music to games. And that's 15 years ago. And so are you starting to think of virtual reality and what artists' music will be there, or?
No. I mean, I'm always curious about this, and I try to lean in and learn and know as much as possible. But I'm also very willing to let the guy next to me take the lead. I don't, as they say, what is it? The pioneers get the arrows, the settlers get the land. That's fine with me. My boss may not like that attitude, but I think that's the best way to run a business. And the truth is, you heard me say that our currency is now streaming. So if an artist cannot put streaming numbers up, cannot generate revenue via streaming, I can't I can't keep that artist on my roster. I've let a couple of artists go that have good, solid touring careers simply because they cannot stream. Their audience just for whatever reason, will not engage with streaming. Now, that said, I'll throw a little curveball in here, and the thing that's been the really big surprise for us over the last 2 years in COVID is our streaming business has grown really substantially. It's really also grown substantially at Amazon, which tells you that our customers older than the typical hip hop customers. They have a relationship with Amazon because they get stuff delivered to their door. They have a little speaker in their kitchen. They say, hey, play Simon and Garfunkel. You know, it's become that. But what we've really seen an explosion of the last 2 years is catalog songs in streaming. And I'm stunned because I don't really still have a firm grasp on who the country consumer is as the ones that engage with streaming, but somebody's streaming a lot of George Strait songs. And I mean, I speculate that there are younger people out there for which this is an easy access. You can dial into anything, you just call it out and you get it. And there's young people out there that go, you know, I have heard this name George Strait forever, and I recognize that he's some kind of icon, but I really don't know much about him. So I'm going to check this out because I can, it's easy. And then, wow, that's easy, and wow, I like that, and wow, I like that. And this has fundamentally changed our business. We're seeing phenomenal amounts of money being made in streaming revenue for older, stronger catalog artists.
I mean, in the research that was presented earlier, today there actually was a video of a young woman who was in her early 20s who said she had discovered George Strait, you know, online. So before I jump off of the DSPs then, there are program directors who will look at how a song is streaming to determine if they're going to add it or not. There's other PDs who won't look at it at all because that's fuzzy math to them. You know, how do you approach it from a promotion standpoint? You know, when you're approaching radio, do you waive the streaming numbers at programmers?
Oh, absolutely. You have to take whatever you can put in front of people and say, these are the facts. So you should be reacting to this in some way. And streaming is massive. There's still some radio programmers that are my good friends who don't want to hear about streaming numbers. They think that somehow guys like me are manipulating all this and we're buying our way into a certain point on the chart. If only it were that easy. I came from the days when, you know, payola was pretty rampant and, you know.
Rumored to have been.
You know, I'll take an easy route if you give it to me. It's not easy. We deal in real time, real money, and you know that's just the way it is because the world talks back to us now. You can't hide things anymore. You know, it's right in front of you. You sell something, you stream something, you see the money right there immediately. You know if you've got something or not. Now that can be a little deceiving too, but that's a whole different philosophical conversation.
I'm sure some of you will have questions. If you do have questions, you can submit them in the app. Just go in, plug them in. When we wrap up, RJ is going to read those, and we'll give both Caroline and Mike an opportunity to answer your questions. Let me jump back to radio, but it's a question I'm going to ask both of you. Country as a radio format is in a 4-year downtrend, even before the pandemic hit us. And by the way, the pandemic, in my opinion, was icing on a burnt cake. You know, when you first take a bite of that cake, it tastes good, but eventually you get to the burnt part and it tastes like shit. And so a lot of folks, I think, looked at ratings dropping with the pandemic and just immediately blanket statement, well, the pandemic, listening habits have changed, which they did. But other formats have come back, and we're seeing growth. In country, other than a few stations here and there, is in a 4-year down cycle. And so, you know, only 2 formats, according to Edison Research, only two formats, showed growth in the last year, and that was classic rock and Christian. Not last year, last 10 years. In the last 10 years, two formats, classic rock, contemporary Christian. Country and new country, or all country, was next to last. And so my question to you, Caroline, where radio is so very important to your business, are we going away, A, and B, what does country need to do? How do we get country to turn around as a radio format?
Yeah, I mean, look, I really focused on, during the pandemic, we did see listening levels for country decline, while at the same time classic hits and classic gold format types, they improved. But that being said, Mike, one of our largest country stations today, WXTU in Philadelphia, saw its CUME increase by 50% in January. So I'm not going to throw in, the dagger there for country music. I think that, as we're able to have more concerts, open up, and as we're able to continue to open up as a country, we'll see country radio come back. I love country radio, and we have some great properties, and I'm a big believer that the music will come back.
Excellent, and congrats on Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Mike, same question.
Well, this goes back to what I just talked about our increased revenues from catalog. I've always theorized that whenever we see that in whatever business, if it's physical business or whatever, that it's an indicator of something else. It's an indicator that maybe our current music is in a little bit of a lull. Maybe it's in a malaise. And this is where it gets really difficult right now, because we're at a point in time when the world is very tribal. So, I personally, I think we've been in this bro country, post-bro country, as my friend Greg Swedberg once said, finger click boyfriend music phase for about 15 years. And that's really rewarding to a sector of the audience, and they are loud, and they'll come to shows, and they'll stream, and it's very rewarding in that sense. But the numbers are not the same. And I think we desperately need a new inflection point. We need something really, really exciting to happen here. And I just look at my own country career, and I came in here in 1990, and Garth Brooks was lighting up the world. And I think we've had a few inflection points along the way that have made it really interesting again. I think Florida Georgia Line certainly brought a whole new vibe to what we do. I think our own Sam Hunt, to a lesser degree, brought a whole new vibe. But there's been nothing for a while. And I think we desperately need it. Ironically, last week I read, I think in All Access, because I do read things, an interview with Guy Zapolian, who is a pretty successful, renowned radio consultant and radio person. And he was talking about exactly the same thing, about how he thinks the music is in a malaise, and he's using like catalog music to make that argument. So this is what I've been thinking, forever, but he's looking at it from a top 40 standpoint, not from a country standpoint. So, yeah, I think we're stuck. I think we're stuck a little bit. And, I'll take the blame if you want, but I still have to make money. When somebody walks in front of me and I see an ability to generate revenue, I'm going to go for it. And, it might not be moving the culture, and it might not be moving the overall thing in a big way. And, there's nothing more rewarding than making money and then discovering that you're also making a difference in people's lives, right? That we all feel that way. It's the same with music. If you put music out there that makes money, and then you realize, wow, I changed everything. People are really responding to this. I'm hearing these stories about, testimonials about this music, and it's like I feel so good about myself. That's great. But make no mistake about it, the money comes first.
Of course. I always say to people, we are mercenaries.
We are. We have to be.
So you're in charge of finding the next artist to, get the listing.
Well, I guess so. Yeah.
Well, what are you doing up here?
What's that?
We're waiting.
Shouldn't you be out looking for that next artist?
Well, I'm very proud of the labels that I've been at the top of. And, the big success that we've had going back to the Capitol days were always outliers that came in from the outside in. They made the biggest difference because they were inflection points. Keith Urban was not welcome when he walked in. I didn't sign him. He was already there, but I could tell right away, this is a different animal altogether. And if I can ride this with some precision, I think we can go really far. And, not only did he explode, but every artist that came in the door after that wanted to be Keith Urban. Yeah. Eric Church, people looked at me in particular and said, what are you doing here? The guy's a rock guy. He's not, and it's like, okay, well, it took an album and a half, but guess what? When it blew up, it blew up. And everybody who walked in the door after that wanted to be Eric Church. My other artists said, when do I get to be cool like Eric Church? And it's like, are you kidding me? Just look at the guy. He's just cool. Look at yourself. You're not.
Caroline, I want to go back to you. Talked about Philadelphia, where you're successful with country. You're very successful in Boston with country. And yet there's always this country doesn't work in the Northeast. And we just saw a country station go out of the format in New York City. And so I guess my question would be, when you launched, and I think your family launched XTU in Philadelphia originally, it had to be a bold move and a bold step. And so I'd love to hear that story, but I'd also like to hear, what's making it win in Boston and Philadelphia and that city between them, it couldn't win.
Yeah, so we launched WXTU in 1983. Everybody told my dad, this is not going to work. Country never works in the Northeast. And he said, what we're doing is not working. We're losing money. We're not going to, we have nothing to lose. So he launched WXTU, and we just saw listening, improve, billing improve, and, it's where it is today. So it just, trust me, country in Philadelphia works, and country in Boston definitely works as well. I mean, there are 2 country stations in Boston today. And so
is part of it just saying we're not going to let this fail and there's no other option?
No, he had done research as well, and there was a big hole there. And look, he's from North Carolina. He was from North Carolina. He didn't really know that much about Philadelphia, and it's like, okay, it's a big hole, and I think it's going to work. And the research indicated that as well.
I don't know if either of you ever watched there was an HBO series called Rome that lasted for 2 seasons, and I watched it, every Sunday. And there's a scene where Pompey has Caesar surrounded, and Caesar sends for Mark Antony back to Rome to leave the city unprotected and bring more men to help him. And they arrive, and Mark Antony walks in and says to Caesar, "My emperor, tell me what our plan is." And he says, "Well, let me tell you the situation first. We're here, 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 here. We're surrounded except for the path with which you came in. We have too few men, not enough men to move forward, and our horses are dying." And Mark Antony says, "So what are our chances?" And he said, "We're probably going to die." And Mark Antony said, "You sent for me to leave Rome unprotected to come into sure loss? Why would you do that?" And he said, "Because the men believe in you, and you can tell the men that they have this one battle to win." And they won. They won. And so just as you were telling that story about, Philly and Boston, I think there is some truth to if someone sits down and says, "Yeah, we're not going to fail. We're doing this. We're committed to this," then it becomes a big thing. And I've seen your company and other companies do that, very strongly. I know that You know, Mike, you and I sat in a CMA meeting a couple years ago while I was still on the board there, and I went on a rant about, you know, country ratings, as I can rant about anything. And I went on a rant about country ratings, and I said, so somebody tell me what the problem with country is. And you said, all of the songs sound alike. And do you think country will ever divide as a format?
No. I think we just need a couple of moments. We need somebody to come in creatively and shake it up. I've often felt that music sounds alike, but this is not the only format, and it's not the only time in history when music has sounded alike. You know, I go back to my childhood and listen to the stuff that I listened to growing up, and that's what made the Beatles so cool, was they were reinventing themselves every day, but they were doing it on the backbone of things that sounded alike. You know, we just need an inflection point, and then hopefully people will, you know, and God help my radio friends, because I feel sorry for all of them, because they feel like their jobs are on the line on every decision they make. And some of my best friends I've gotten to know through radio. And but you know, you get an artist like Chris Stapleton, clearly not the model for what had come before him, and it was hard. It was really hard. And if it wasn't for that big CMA performance with Justin Timberlake and the music just exploding sales-wise right after that, and if it wasn't for the fact that he was going out and selling out arenas immediately, nobody would have bought in, because they didn't think he was one of us. And, you know, I don't know what us is. You can have that debate forever. I think there's a lot of us's out there. And, you know, I know the biggest reward for us financially as a label is when we push the envelope and we stretch it. We strategically just go for it. It doesn't always work. But I think the same is true for everybody who makes their living in country music, including radio. I think radio is a lot better because Chris Stapleton eventually broke through. My hat's off to my promotion staff back for doing that, and everyone on my staff for making that happen. And I just hope when the next one comes through that doesn't look and feel exactly right, I hope we're a little understanding and we give it a shot.
I mean, you guys, you told me the story about Chris, how he was a writer and he didn't want to be the artist, and you pushed him on that. Another artist that I mentioned early on, Casey Musgrave, is just unbelievably good and talented, and the things you've built as a label are strong. We'll get to questions in a second. Again, if you want to submit anything, put them in the app. Caroline, you have a new initiative that I've been tipped off to, and so
Really?
I hope I don't put you on the spot here. But belong within the companies and the communities we've served, and the initiative being really local and giving back to the communities, which makes a lot of sense. And so can you flesh that out for us?
Yeah, so let me just go back. At the beginning of the year, we sent out an email to all of our employees outlining the goals for this year. I mean, I think that, you know, to be successful as a company, everyone needs to be on the same page, right? And so revenue diversification, expanding your audience, you know, creating great content. And part of that is our DEI initiative, and then, you know, profitability. So our DEI initiative is Belong. And it's really important, you know, it's not just only the right thing to do, it is what everyone should be doing, and think about it. Just step back and think about it. You know, if you do not have a diverse workforce, what does that mean? Like, everybody is like-minded, and you will never I don't want to say you will never succeed, but the chances of succeeding are lower at that point. It's so, so, so important to be diverse and to mirror the communities that you are in. And that is an initiative that we're rolling out. We're having training for the executive team, for our market managers, for middle managers this year. And it's just, our goal is to mirror our communities.
Can I say something? Yes. I'm very ADHD, so you got to ride with me. There's just clear evidence that a younger audience is not listening to radio at all. Scares me to death. I don't know what's going to have to happen to ensure this as viable media with these numbers that are in front of us. When I've been asked about this in the past, and I'm thinking of one example, which was quite a while ago, maybe 15 years ago, somebody asked me in the Tennessean, how does radio feel to you? And what do you think its future is? This was back when everybody was forecasting it was going to go away. And I said, well, I know what makes radio special to me, and I think it makes radio special in general, and that is that it's live and it's local. And I always talk about my friend Dale Carter, who doesn't play any of my records, by the way. Dale Carter, when you're in Kansas City and you're listening to KFKF, no, DAF, what station is he on?
DAF.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. I don't even care. When you're listening to Dale Carter, you know you're in Kansas City. Everything about it is in Kansas City, and that's invigorating to me, even as an outsider. And there's no question that Bobby Bones is a fantastic show. And so much of these syndicated shows are fantastic shows. And there's no question that taking a Bobby Bones or an Elena or whatever it is and dropping it into the 55th market, you're probably improving the overall on-air product immensely by doing that. But be careful, because I think it's got real danger in there. And I feel as a casual observer that the live and local thing is what the future is for broadcast radio. Now, when I said this and it appeared in the Tennessean, I was shredded. I mean, shredded by your former boss, John Dickey. Picked up the phone, called me every name in the book because he was about to embark on a program.
I've been on some of those calls.
I should only imagine. He was about to invest heavily in some serious national programming. And then the next call was Clay Honeycutt, who wasn't as nasty. He was nicer, but he was about to do the Bobby Bones thing. He was doing iHeart then. And then the next call was from my dear friend John Ivey, who I've known for 40 years, who was KISS FM in LA, who was doing the same thing. And it's like, who the hell are you to even have an opinion about this? I was like, I don't know. I got, somebody was interviewing me and they asked me the question. I gave them an honest answer, but I paid the price for a long time and I'm still right.
Well, yeah. I can tell you as when I was with Westwood One, and anyone who's involved in the network will tell you that the biggest problem with syndicated programming is when a station doesn't embrace it and make it local. When a station just flicks the switch and walks away, it will fail. But the people that have the talent, cut liners, cut sweepers, talk about the promotions, the program directors that treat their syndicated talent like they're local, it can be done to be localized. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have local talent. I strongly agree that the difference is, when I coach talent in local markets, and I will say to them when they do something great, insert name here, Ryan Seacrest couldn't have done that. Yeah. Just because he doesn't have that information in that market. So I agree, totally. RJ, do you want to go to questions?
Yes. Hello. But Dale Carter is KFKF in Kansas City, plays heritage country music.
I love that station, by the way.
Usually wins the market. It's typically #1 country station in the market. But to your point about localization and that, the first question is it possible that the continued downtrend in country radio is because stations on a local level need to step up their brand as live and local, friends for listeners. Has the pandemic potentially amplified the need for less tracking and more local? I guess, Caroline, that would be directed for you.
Yeah, I mean, and Mike, I may have a question for you after I respond to that. I think that, like, I can give you an example of what I was going through during the pandemic. And during the deepest, darkest days, no one knew what was going to happen, how long this was going to be. I started streaming WMMR. Sorry, it's not country radio, but I started streaming WMMR Pierre Robert. And he had this really nice, calming voice. And I listened to him for weeks, just weeks. And he actually was one of the people that helped me just get through. And I think that the same thing applies across the board. We are companions to our audience. They look toward us during times of need. And that is why live and local is so important. Now, the question I have for you is, you know, many companies today, I mean, it's no secret, you know, radio revenues are declining, right? And if you're not able to offset them with digital or whatever, what do? You see many companies reducing staff. But how do you continue to stay connected to your local audience? And you touched on that a little bit, but what else can we do? I know you have to have live and local, but what else for 24 hours?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. One, let's pretend you have a radio station that has a live morning show, your voice track midday, you have a live afternoon show, you're running syndication in the evening and overnights, which a lot of stations do that. They might have one big dog in a cluster, but the others have, you know, more and more, you know, that is voice track. The first thing I would say, voice tracking is not a dirty word. I can show you voice track talent that are better prepared than your local talent. They just are. And you know why? Because they know they've got to sit there and prepare and go to the website for Fort Wayne, Indiana, and see what's going on in that market. Where some, not all live talent, I obviously like live talent, but you know, how many times have you walked in the studio and somebody's looking at their phone and they're not doing prep? They're texting or they're posting their cat pictures on Facebook. And so, you know, to me, and by the way, when I was in that corporate role, I would say to the live talent, it's something special. You're live, you're here, sound it. I want to hear you talk about the graffiti on the water tank by Interstate 90, right?
Yep.
And so that's the thing. So then there's some voice trackers who just phone it in. I mean, part of the problem is if you're inside a company and I work for a station A, and then I'm forced to voice track in 3 other markets, I may just be phoning it in. But people whose real job is voice tracking, I find they tend to be better prepared. To the syndication part, I would say to PDs, treat that syndicated talent just like the one of your talent. If you send an email to your local talent, copy whoever the producer is for that syndicated show, and get them to talk about your $1,000 an hour giveaway and so on. And I think that's what you have to do. But, you know, the environment I was in, the environment that anyone who manages at a higher level is in, is you're only as strong as your local people. And if they don't like something, it can fail if they don't buy into and execute it properly.
Well, that's true of any business, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the cream always rises. Yeah. And part of this thing that worries me about the trend towards national programs, and it's all driven by economics. I get it, but part of it is, where is that next generation of radio talent going to come from? Because they're not nurtured. There's no ladder to crawl up anymore.
Do you mean for air talent or in general?
I'm sorry?
Do you mean for air talent or in
For air talent, yes.
I
mean, Bobby Bones is great, but he didn't just drop into a national program and be great. He was working in different radio stations.
But let me give you a perspective, and then I'm going to hand off to Caroline, because I know that you guys have smaller markets where you have talent who are live and local. But I would argue that there's more opportunity for air talent today to practice and hone their skills. Not get paid, but today I can go to Anchor and have a podcast. I can get online.
That's true.
And do all of those things, and that's it. When I was a kid who had a fake radio station in my attic, like most people either were in their basement or their attic with their fake radio station, what made me good was not that I had the fake station, it was the repetition. And it was throwing that tire through throwing the football through a tire 100,000 times. And so the challenge is getting paid to do it. That's the challenge. The difference was when I was able to start in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, I made $1.65 an hour. But there is, anybody that calls me and says, I want to do this, I start by saying to them, go read the electronic newspaper out loud at breakfast every morning. Put Anchor on your phone and start a podcast. How do you handle it with your local markets? You're obviously growing people because I see you advance people.
Yeah, and thank goodness Justin is here today, because Justin gets the credit for doing that. We actually also look at influencers within our markets. And so, because they have digital skills and also they bring audience with them as well. So, and then we go to schools. There are colleges that still have broadcast and digital schools. Syracuse University, that's a great school. We've got, Jeff from our morning show guy in Las Vegas came from Syracuse, very young, and he has the world in his hands right now. Yes, yeah. And so it's just there are opportunities out there if you look.
I'm sure that there are. I'm very uneducated about everything I talk about.
I wasn't chastising you. I'm just passionate.
Shit just comes out of me, whether it's
chastising you.
worth it or not.
RJ, other questions?
Yeah, and you're touching on something that our next question is directed at. And, we did see earlier today in the research presentation some distressing yet not surprising data on Gen Z listening of radio. As we see a shift in radio listenership among a younger audience, as well as a decrease in younger people joining radio as a career, how do you plan to engage Gen Z not only to listen, and Caroline, I think you were just addressing this, but to consider radio as a career choice? Because that generation doesn't think it's very cool.
Yeah, I think it's really just exposing them too, and that's one of the reasons why we got into esports, right? Because we wanted to attract that elusive audience because they're not listening to over-the-air radio. And whether we're able to attract them through esports, through at some point the metaverse, or through editorial or video content on our sites, we're looking to attract them, and I feel like once we can start engaging with them, then we can bring them in. They may not listen to over-the-air radio, but they're going to consume our content somewhere, and that's what we want. I want my overall audience to grow. That's what I want.
Yeah, I was in the lobby of the hotel before I came up to the session. I met a young man named Cody Allen, who's a new young artist, and Victoria Shaw was with him, and she was telling me that he has some ridiculous number of TikTok followers, and he's not getting any radio airplay anywhere, but he's able to do shows at 1,000 and 1,500 seat sheds because of what he has on social media and TikTok, and so, it's everywhere.
TikTok is very weird, as you know, and I have pushed it aside for my whole career because I do country, so it's not been that big. But you can amass really big followings. Is that going to translate into something that is bigger than that? Goes back to what I talked about before about being tribal. Yeah, you can look over there and go, oh my God, look at all those people are singing the words. But what I need is all these people to sing all the words. And can it translate? And TikTok is really good at identifying tribes and really good at developing tribes. And, we signed Priscilla Block right before during COVID. And I got the call from my head of A&R, Brian Ryder, said, okay, you got a minute? And I said, yeah. And my mother-in-law was having emergency surgery in Ohio, and I was sitting in a car in a parking lot bored, and he said, a female artist broke wide open last night on TikTok. And I went, oh, God. And he said, yeah, but you might want to look at this. So I didn't have anything to do, so I sat there with my phone, and I dug in, and I dug in, and I dug in, and it was like, wow, this is really totally relatable. You know, yeah, she got here via TikTok, but that's not the reason to be excited about this. So yeah, there's value to it, but it's frightening too. It's really frightening. And you know, we've got all of our pop labels out there. All they do is get up in the morning and look on the computer to see what's generating metrics. It's what I use, the term metrics, whatever it is, TikTok numbers, streams, whatever. And if they see somebody that's blown up, they just call and make them an offer. You know, and it's like, okay. You know, where I come from, that's called throwing shit up against the wall and see what sticks, you know. But this is how a lot of at least the pop industry operates. It's like, be the first to get there. If you don't, somebody else will. And, you know, we heard last month about somebody that blew wide open from this, so we're not going to let that happen to us again. I get it. I'm being very critical. I'm being very sarcastic and throwing generalizations out there, but it's a little scary. It's really scary.
Yeah, one more, probably for Caroline and you, Mike McVay. Is the elephant in the room that is negatively impacting the malaise the Nielsen people meter? They say country radio cume is down, yet country sells music and concert tickets.
Why don't you start that?
Go ahead, Caroline.
You're the expert here at.
Okay. So here. Well,
Jump ball.
Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. So here's the deal. Nielsen's the only thing we have. The sample size is too small to give us really, really accurate responses. The people meter is better than a number 2 lead pencil and writing in a booklet. Yet in the booklets, we see country radio do better in the ratings than we do in PPM markets. And so the question becomes, is it a problem with having to carry a meter? Will Nielsen ever make the telephone, if they gave people free iPhones for 2 years and free service, more people would participate. So that would be good. The bigger thing for me, RJ, before I hand it back to you, is I think we've got to figure out how to get to one metric. I mean, when you talk to the DSPs, they're adding together their telephone, no matter where you listen, right? Nielsen doesn't do a good job of capturing what's listened to on a phone, what's on a laptop, what's on a smart speaker, what's over the air radio. And to me, we've got to figure out how to be able to amalgamate or accumulate all of that listening and have one metric.
Yeah, and don't really get me started on Nielsen and PPM. I mean, I just, I think that...
Oh, please get started.
No, that's okay. I mean, like, Justin and John Reynolds, I don't know if John's here or not, I can't see. Oh, there he is, yeah. We've had a number of conversations about this, and I really think that part of the issue as to why we're not reaching, some of the younger demos, especially on, digital, whatever, streams or whatever, is because the lack of newer music, it becomes, we really don't start playing it until it's general. And John and I have had a number of conversations as to what can we do to really start showcasing new artists, new music, and that kind of thing. But, PPM, kind of prevents that. So there are a lot of issues with PPM. The sample size, one, we look at, our ratings from month to month, from week to week on the weeklies and everything. And, for the diary markets, that's just and so it's just, it's what we have and we live by it, but it's really frustrating because I don't think it reflects the radio station all the time.
Thank you.
And thank you all very much. Round of applause for Mike and Caroline.